Welcome into Point Blank, brought to you by Fitz Roofing. I'm Brandon Strange of Sports Map Houston. This guy here, that's Joel Blank, ESPN 97.5, 92.5. And hey, if you want to show us some love on this channel, be sure to hit like on the video, subscribe to the channel, comment below, and let us know what you guys think on the topics. We really do appreciate it. Joel, one of the biggest questions surrounding Deshaun Watson this offseason has been, outside of the question of guilt or innocence, is when does he play football again? And if the current Deshaun Watson timeline holds up, there's a worst case scenario that some of the media outlets are already talking about and saying that we could see play out, in which Watson goes on the exempt list while the trial plays out. And we know, based on the current timeline, he doesn't get deposed until sometime in February, which would mean the trial starts in spring. And you've got 22 accusers, which you would assume would mean the case lasts for months to litigate. And then on the back end of that, let's say that he either loses that case in this scenario, just in theory, if he loses the case or settles, then the league could subsequently suspend him following that, which, depending on the severity, could cost him maybe a second full season. So it would be possible under this circumstance that Deshaun doesn't play for 2 years. So taking all that into consideration, how much value would be left in a Deshaun Watson trade as a trade asset if he were to sit out 2 full seasons?
I would say quick reaction would be not much, because of the fact that you're dealing with the great unknown. The workouts would have to be extensive, and they would have to be almost like being redrafted, where you would have to go through a combine-like setup and realize from an athletic standpoint he still had it. Then through the passing and through all the different things that you put him through drill-wise to make sure that football-wise he still had it. You talk about at the start of this process, even before any of this legal stuff came up, that it might be the greatest trade in the history of the NFL in terms of size-wise and the amount of first-round picks and other assets coming back. Now, as we look at it, if it takes 2 years, it could be the least amount of return on a guy that was so productive before all this went down for a franchise like the Texans, who sorely need to get every ounce of what they can out of a trade for Deshaun Watson, as well as many draft picks to pan out and as many picks period as they can get. And so it's not setting up to be a very advantageous situation for the Texans. Now, Rusty Hardin said the league hasn't even talked to him yet. So they haven't even questioned him about what's going on to this point before we even get into the court battles or the settlements or whatever we're talking about. The punishment phases, the conversational phases, the meeting phases, it's all being pushed back so long that this could be just a complete disaster for both the Texans and for Watson.
That's amazing. I want to talk to you about how a verdict can also impact this timeline. But before we do that, give us a word from our sponsors at Fitz Roofing.
Well, we love the people at Fitz Roofing. Look, they're fantastic, and they're very much dedicated to the people of Houston. It used to be just roof repairs and roof replacements for your house or your business. Now it's so much more, from house repairs to new fences in your yard. They do so much, and it's as simple as just going to fitzroofing.com and seeing what they can do, and then calling them at 832-521-3001, because they're going to do a free, no obligation inspection of what you need done. It costs you nothing, and they can tell you exactly what they can do for you, and then let the process go from there. It's Fitz Roofing, making a difference one home at a time.
So at the beginning of the video, we talk about how a guilty verdict could impact Deshaun from a punishment standpoint. But let me ask you this. How much would a guilty verdict further impact teams' willingness to trade for him?
It's going to impact it a lot, Brandon. And I guess the easiest way I can make a comparison is, and not that it's apples to apples, but it's like saying that you've got a guy that is an incredible player, but he's in the last year of his deal, and you're trading for him right before the deadline. You're not going to have to give up as much, because there's as much as there is a challenge in making the trade, then the challenge becomes, can I re-sign him at what price, and how much do I have to extend myself as a franchise or a general manager, so therefore you don't have to give up as much. That's what we're dealing with Deshaun. You went from maybe 3 to 4 first-round draft picks and other players to get a guy like Deshaun Watson, and all of a sudden now you're saying, hey, with all the ramifications that could possibly happen with, as you said, a guilty plea, or the league cracking down on just the fact that it's been a bad look for him, the team, and the league, that they basically suspend him, and there's a lot of punishments that are involved to where a team goes, hey, I'll take him off your hands. I know he doesn't want to play there anymore anyway, but I'm not willing to give you much because I'm not sure what I'm going to get that he has left in the tank. So it's going to be a real interesting proposition. It's not a good situation for the Texans, and it's obviously not a good situation for Deshaun Watson.
No, and I want to make sure before I make this comparison, this is also not apples to apples, but it does remind me a little bit of the Roberto Osuna trade, where the Astros acquire a guy that's got some baggage on him. And so a fan base might look at that the same way, because that did split our fan base here in Houston a little bit. You'd have to think that other fan bases may think the same thing if, and this is a gigantic if there is a guilty verdict attached to Deshaun. And we're not saying it's headed that direction. We're just saying if that's the way that it plays out, then certainly that would impact a team's willingness to want to bring him in, because the fans may not be excited about that, right?
But remember, Brandon, that at least from an Astros perspective, Luno did his homework. He was adamant from the jump that, hey, we did our due diligence on this, and that by investigating it and doing the research, that there was a pretty good chance he was going to come out of it without a guilty verdict, and he wasn't going to be charged. So therefore, the team would look better. But again, the verdict was up in the air at the time the trade was made, and you did your homework. That's going to be the key with the Watson situation. If it's going to be 2 years before the verdicts come in or all these cases are settled, then you're going to have to do a whole lot of due diligence. And even though you feel really good about a certain percentage of the cases, if just one goes the opposite way, it changes everything. So it's just so muddled down, and there's so many variables up in the air that it's going to be a really tough deal for any team, fan base or not. It's the organization itself, and even however many investigators it takes to get to the bottom of it, they may still not have a clear picture of, hey, this is what he's going to come out of it with or without, and this is what we're going to be dealing with. I don't know that anybody could paint that picture clearly.